Just a few months ago, I went on a plein air painting trip to the central North Island of New Zealand. And this is such a beautiful area, characterised by mountains, active volcanoes and just really rugged countryside. On one of those days on my trip, I decided to go up the side of the mountain of Mount Ruapehu so I could paint the view and the mountain from a close proximity. Now it might not look it from the video, but it was actually pretty cold and windy when I was painting here. It was late winter, so still very cold. Okay, so I'm halfway up the mountain at the moment, and it's one of those situations where I want to paint a mountain scene, but there's not many places to pull over in my car. But there is a place here, and there's actually some quite interesting views and scenes that I can paint. So I've got a few hours here, so I'm going to see what I can come up with. Having parked my car at the side of the road and set up my painting gear, this seemed like a pretty good area to do some plein air painting. Now I've only got a few hours to paint here, so I'll probably just try and see if I can use the same colours that I've already mixed for my first painting for the other paintings, so we'll see. But I'm just going to try and see if I can smash out at least a couple of paintings. I've only got a few hours, but I'll see how we get on. If I can do 3, that would be awesome, but I might be pushing it. But anyway, I'm going to get into it. There we go, all the gear set up, cameras on the side of a mountain. There you go, look at that. What could be better? Let's get into some painting. So the first thing I decided to paint when I was at the side of the mountain here was the view in the distance. I was on the west side of the mountain, and I really liked the foreground, which was full of these stones and grit, and the rugged mountain vegetation that's adapted for these harsh conditions. The other thing I really liked was the recession of landforms into the distance. I couldn't really make out whether I could see the sea or not, but there was definitely lots of interesting elements in the landscape that I was painting that I thought would be interesting in my artwork. Now I wanted to paint these artworks quickly because I want to capture the essence and atmosphere of the place that I'm in. The weather conditions could change at any moment and the light's shifting as well. I'm painting on a 6x8 linen canvas panel, and these are ideal for painting outdoors. I'm also using an Alla Prima Pochard box easel made by a guy called Ben Haggart who hand makes them all, but they're absolutely perfect for outdoor painting and they're especially designed for that. If you want to get your hands on one of these or the linen panels that I used, I've put the link in the description box below. Now, as I want to paint quickly, and especially as the light's likely to change as well, the first thing I do with my plein air paintings is paint the dark values and shadows first in the landscape. So we'll find the darkest shadows in the foreground, those foreground rocks there, and I've used a mix of ultramarine blue with some burnt sienna and a little bit of alizarin crimson. And then what I've done is I've added titanium white to the rock shadows in the midground, and then those distant shadows as well. Use the same colours but with more titanium white to make the value lighter. And that's because as the landforms recede into the distance, the darks are not as dark. They actually get lighter in value. I can also use these same colour mixes for the clouds, which is what I did in the distance of this painting. I'm using oil paints to paint this artwork, and the brand of paint I'm using is Blue Ridge oils. These are an artist quality oil, really nice to paint with. I totally recommend them, and in fact I'd always recommend that you paint with an artist quality oil. If you'd like to get some Blue Ridge oils, I've put a link in the description box below. One of the things I loved about this scene is the abundance of low chroma colours, especially into the distance. So that's really going to help create the atmospheric depth within my painting. I'm also using relatively big brushes for the size of the canvas that I'm painting on. I'm using number 5 flat brushes and number 3 flats and filbert brushes. I'm using Rosemary & Co brushes. They're absolutely awesome to paint with. I've been painting with them for years. Now there were a lot of rusty tones in the foreground landscape, especially within the vegetation but also within the rocks and the ground. So I was mixing up combinations of yellow ochre with burnt sienna, a little alizarin crimson, titanium white and also ultramarine blue. The ultramarine blue is going to help to darken the value of the colours in places and also desaturate them as well. but generally these are earth colours I've been using, so they're lower chroma colours. Now at this point in the painting, I'd roughly got the canvas covered with paint, so the next thing I do is a process of restating the dark values. So this is going to bring out the elements within the landscape, especially the rocks. It's just going to bring them more to life and create more depth within the painting. And I'm also switching up my brushes as well, from using bristle brushes to brushes with a synthetic hair on them instead. And this is going to help to produce more detailed chiseled marks. So I was using a number 3 ivory flat brush for painting some of these rocks. I'd definitely recommend them. Now whilst I was painting, the wind was definitely picking up, and I never thought to bring any gloves with me. Bit silly going up the side of a mountain. But the weather was quite a bit warmer lower down, especially in Topor where I was staying, which is still over 300 meters above sea level. So as I say, never thought to bring any gloves with me. The painting conditions were starting to get a little bit more tricky, especially as my fingers were getting cold. And it would make you wonder, why paint in such cold conditions anyway in the first place, or why paint outdoors? I absolutely love painting outdoors and I do it a lot, and it's really helped with my studio painting. It just really makes you look at the landscape and makes you study it. It also captures the essence of the place that you've been to. So for me, I just find plein air painting is just really good for my mind and soul, and I absolutely love it. Even when it's tricky painting conditions like this one and where I was getting cold. I mean, I didn't even bring a hat. I don't know why I didn't think to bring one. I was having to use my hood in the end. But anyway, I was starting to speed up my painting process as I wanted to get this painting finished. So adding more details to the snow and adding things like some of the vegetation as well. So increasing the saturation of some of the colours that I'd already mixed by adding in colours such as cadmium yellow and even a little bit of cadmium red. Now by the time I'd finished this first painting, it had taken me quite a bit more time to paint than I thought. So the idea of doing 3 paintings had gone out the window, but then I thought, you know what, I've got just about enough time. You can see here that it was already late afternoon, early evening, but I thought, nah, you know what, I've got one more painting in me. I could probably smash out another painting. I only got about an hour, so I'm just gonna have to paint this one really quick. And what I wanted to paint was this beautiful snow on top of this mountain here. I really wanted to capture that, especially in the evening light. So I started sketching out the composition with the burnt sienna mixed with a bit of liquid. Liquid's a medium that I'm using. It helps to speed up the drying time. It's absolutely ideal for plein air painting because it can start to dry even a little bit whilst you're outdoors, so can form enough of a tack that you can sometimes layer on more paint later on in the painting. But in this case, I was just thinking about, right, let's see if I can paint this as quickly as possible. I was getting really cold at this point, and right now I was thinking, man, why did I even start another painting? I'm just getting really cold, my fingers are freezing. But no, I decided to carry on. Just like with the first painting, I'm painting on a 6x8 linen canvas panel, and I got straight into painting the dark values and shadows first in the scene. So the darkest shadows were in some of these rocks that were in the foreground. There's also the snow shadows as well, and mainly using mixes of ultramarine blue with burnt sienna, a little alizarin crimson and titanium white. Except for those rocks in the foreground, there's barely any titanium white there at all. Now these colours are perfect for these shadow areas, especially in rocks and mountain faces, also snow as well. Burnt sienna is a dark orange, so it combines well with ultramarine blue, as orange is opposite to blue on the colour wheel, and especially when you add titanium white, because you can create loads of neutral greys and the kind of colours that you'd find in mountain landscapes. And then mixing in a little bit of alizarin crimson just gives it a violet tint as well, just adds another dimension to the paint. It makes for some more interesting colour. The other thing I've been doing is creating broken colour, where I don't mix the colours together thoroughly, so you can get some of the individual hues of the paint coming through your colour mixes. Now when I was painting the snow on the side of the mountain, I really wanted to emphasise some of the highlights, so I went in for a snow mix with a slightly darker tone by mixing in some of the shadow mix into it. Then I was just going to leave it for a little while, and then right at the end is where I was going to add my lightest values, so pretty much titanium white with a little bit of yellow ochre mixed in. Now after painting the foreground, again this is mixes of some of those earth tones these rusty colours and some of the plants as well, the grit and dust on the ground. These are all varying mixes of yellow ochre, alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, titanium white and ultramarine blue. And then lastly I painted the sky. Now when I started painting the mountains there were a couple of clouds there, but as I was painting it I decided to get rid of those clouds. It just wasn't working. You'll see it in a moment. But I got the canvas covered and I went back to painting the dark values, so re-emphasising those dark values there using a smaller brush, a number 3 synthetic flat brush. Now I've got to be honest, at this point I was getting really cold. My fingers were absolutely freezing. I was actually having to like pull the sleeves up over my fingers from my jacket that I was wearing. And even the painting at this stage, I was looking at it, I was like, man, this painting does not look good. I was just thinking it looks terrible, and I really was thinking about calling it a day. My feet were getting cold as well because I didn't really have appropriate footwear either. I was just wearing a pair of trainers with a pair of thick socks, so all up I wasn't really equipped for painting on the side of a mountain. And as I say, I was just about to give up. I was thinking, man, this painting is looking awful. But then I thought, no, I'm going to carry on. I'm not giving up, not on my watch. So I carried on, adding more brush strokes. And at this point, I was just wanting to get this painting finished. So I was just slapping those brush marks on, trying to paint as quickly as possible. Now, in doing that and just not caring about the painting anymore and just trying to get it finished, the loose brush marks that I was creating was really starting to add more vitality and life to the painting. And I could see it was starting to take form and come around. So that was giving me more enthusiasm to just get this painting finished. I was also racing against the clock because I could see the sun was not far from setting. Bearing in mind this was still winter, so it was early evening. Now you can see here, this is where I'm adding my lightest layers of paint to the mountain, and I was just using straight titanium white with some yellow ochre to warm it up. And this is where I really want to emphasise those loose brush marks, because you can create some beautiful textures in the mountains and it just makes the whole mountain look alive. Now if you're an artist and you want to bring your paintings to life, or you're struggling, or even if you're a complete beginner, you've got to come and join me at my online art school where I've got loads of painting tutorials. I've got a beginner's landscape painting course in the making and I'm uploading the modules as I make them, so you can start watching it right now. I also do live Zoom calls for painting critiques and painting live streams as well, so it's all there to help you with your landscape painting. And when you join, you'll be part of a vibrant community of like-minded people. So come and join me there. I've put a link in the description box below. Now, aside from my online art school, I'm also giving away a free ebook on Beginner's Guide to Landscape Painting. So this is ideal for complete beginners or even seasoned artists as well. So I've put a link to that in the description box below if you want to grab yourself a free copy. Now back to the painting, and I turned it round to the light for the last bit, just to add the few last details. And you know what, I thought this was one of the best paintings I did on the whole trip, and it's funny how that happens, that I very nearly gave up on it and then it actually turned out to be one of the best ones I did. I was absolutely freezing, but I had a really great day painting outdoors at the side of a mountain, and I recommend you should try plein air painting. So I hope you enjoyed this video and it inspires you to do some landscape painting or even take up plein air painting. Thanks for watching, I hope you're having a beautiful day and I shall see you in the next video.